Hello, good morning. Watching Breakfast with Louise and Dan this morning. It's just gone 7:30.
Let's get you right up to date with everything that's happening. Sweeping new restrictions on people's movements have come into force around the UK as the government tries to halt the spread of the coronavirus, which has now claimed 335 lives.
We've all been ordered not to leave homes except to buy basics, seek medical help, exercise once a day or for essential work. Shops selling non-essentials have been told to close. The measures were announced by the Prime Minister in a rare broadcast at 8:30 last night to the nation from Downing Street. Well, as promised, let's speak now to the Minister for the Cabinet Office, Michael Gove, who joins us from Westminster. Mr Gove, thank you very much for spending some time with us on Breakfast this morning. I know you're very busy. We've had so many questions from our viewers, which I'd like to go through them just as much time as you've got this morning to answer some of these, a bit of clarity on what the government announced last night. Can I ask you first of all, to make it clear, if you can, what are we being asked to do this morning?
Wherever possible, people should stay at home. If people can work from home, they absolutely should, and we should limit our social contact with people outside our own household. So, of course, people will want to exercise, but we should try to limit that to one walk, one run, or one cycle a day. Of course, people will need to get food, but we should limit shopping to an absolute minimum, and all non-essential retail should close.
OK, on that point of retail, that's a really interesting one, because lots of our viewers get in contact today asking about Mike Ashley's decision to keep Sports Direct open. Are they essential? Are you going to ask them to change that?
Sports Direct is not essential. I hope they will change that, yes.
Okay, so what sort of pressure can the government put on them to make sure that they do close?
We'll be talking to everyone affected, but it is clear to me that Sports Direct is not essential retail.
OK, so when they make that argument that they're sort of providing equipment for people who will be going out to exercise, which you said is permitted once a day for everybody, why are they making that argument, and is that helpful?
It's not helpful. I think it is the case that for people who are walking or running, most people will have the ability to do that without having to visit Sports Direct in order to be able to do so. And of course it is the case that sports equipment can be ordered as other items can be online, and online delivery is something that will continue.
OK, lots of questions as well about talking about essential work, things like plumbers saying they are cancelling work. Can a plumber go and fix a boiler today? Can an electrician go and fix a fuse box? These are people, so many people get in contact today wanting clarity on these issues, particularly those who are self-employed, like those sorts of trades. What is the advice from the government for them this morning?
Well, of course, if you're attending an emergency in someone's home in order to ensure that that people can stay safe in that home, that's appropriate. But there will be some visits which in the ordinary run of things would continue, which are not essential, and people should not undertake those.
OK, and the construction industry is a really interesting one. We've just spoken to Sadiq Khan about that, who has very strong views on the fact that he says the government haven't gone far enough on this. You've got Robert Jenrick, one of the ministers, saying, the housing minister, saying advice for housing and construction and maintenance industries: if you can work from home, do. If you're working on a site, you can continue to do that, but please follow Public Health England guidance on social distancing. We've got Nicola Sturgeon advising construction sites in Scotland to close. Do you concede that this is an area where it's murky to know what the right answer on this is at the moment?
It is the case, as Robert Jenrick has pointed out, that construction should continue on sites. People should obviously exercise sensitivity and common sense and follow social distancing measures, but construction in the open air on those sorts of sites can continue.
OK, well, on the specific point that Sadiq Khan made, said that the government have not been strong enough on this. He says particularly that construction workers should only be classed as key workers if their work is a matter of public safety.
I think it's important that when we have construction work that is going on in a way that can be done safely in the open air on new sites, that does continue. It's important that we make sure that construction and manufacturing can continue, and that seems to me to be the safest way of ensuring that we can maintain appropriate social distancing rules in a way which ensures that people who cannot work from home can continue to do so.
Loads of questions from those who are self-employed this morning, and from that announcement made by the Prime Minister last night, who feel that their work is essential because otherwise they can't afford to live. When will we see some sort of measure from the government for protection for the self-employed? Because there are many people, I know outside of the self-employed as well, there are many people in a desperate situation this morning.
I quite understand, and the Treasury are, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak are very well aware of the concerns that many people who are self-employed have. We'll be saying more about this later. It's already the case that the Chancellor said that we'll do whatever it takes in order to ensure that the economic health of the nation can be protected, but the single most important thing is maintaining the health of individuals, and that's why we do have to have the stringent measures that the Prime Minister announced last night.
And part of those stringent measures, one of those you talked about was exercise. I've got some specific questions on that as well, because again, people asking for clarity. What does it mean in terms of the length that you can go out? You say once a day. How long are we being asked to do that for?
Well, I think it's, again, appropriate if people want to go for a run or a walk. They can do so. If you're going for a run and you're running through parks or so on, it's important to maintain distance from other runners and other walkers. If you are going for a walk, only go for a walk with members of your immediate household. And again, if you're going out for a cycle ride, again, whatever the appropriate length is, but please, please, please maintain appropriate distance from others who are using the roads and pavements.
And how far can you go from your home if you're going out on a run or a walk?
I think people can go for the standard length of run or walk that they ordinarily would have done, but I think the important thing is once a day.
Do you think as well, I mean, lots of people talking about this last night, that in some other countries there were restrictions about exercise, which were then very much hardened in the days and the weeks after that, because people were sort of abusing that freedom, if you like. Can you see changes being made if people don't stick to those government guidelines?
Well, we'll keep everything under review, and we'll review at Easter the impact and the extent of the measures that we've put forward. But I think it is the case that if people follow these measures, if they restrict their physical activity outside the home to walking, running or cycling, and they maintain an appropriate distance from others, then that is a way of allowing people to keep fit, and it should be the case that people go for that run or that walk or that cycle ride just once a day.
I've got a couple of quick fire ones, Mr. Gove, if we can. Can you clarify that schools do remain open for key workers at the moment?
Yes.
Children of key workers. Excellent. OK, thank you for clarifying that. There's quite a few people asking that question, because even though the Prime Minister didn't mention it, I think the assumption was that because he didn't mention it, it would continue. So thank you for clearing that one up for us. Back to the employment side of things. Lots of people getting in contact this morning, and what they're saying is they, for example, are accountants who are saying they feel they're not key workers, but their employers are actually insisting that they come to work. How do you resolve a situation like that?
I think it is the case that accountants should be able to work from home, and employers should be clear. Wherever people can work from home, they should. There will be some people who are critical to the effective operation of financial services, of making sure that banks work in a way which mean that all of us can have the money that we need in order to pay for the goods that are being delivered to our homes. But people who are accountants should be able to work from home. Technology enables that to happen.
Can I ask you about split and separated families as well this morning? Many questions on this. We've got one lawyer who contacted us saying that already she's getting emails about separated parents saying other parent can't see the child, the other child, that child to share during these measures. She says family courts can't do their work at the moment. She and says many families need clarification on that. What is the government advice? What is your advice this morning for those many split and shared separated families at the moment?
Well, again, my heart goes out to people who are having to wrestle with all of the difficulties that this emergency imposes, and who are also separated or divorced. The key thing here is that actually, if you want to ensure that children can see their parent, then they can be moved from one parent to another. On a previous broadcast on Good Morning Britain, I stress that wherever possible, this should be kept to a minimum. But I want to absolutely clarify that I wasn't sufficiently clear earlier. It is the case that children under the age of 18 can see both parents.
I was going to ask you specifically about that. Can we just clarify that? Because I think that's a really important point for many this morning, because there was an addition to the government guidelines, which I was reading through this morning, saying that children under 18 between their parents' homes, that includes that sort of freedom of movement, if you like. So for those many people getting in contact today, you would like to clarify that advice, that what you said earlier wasn't entirely, I'm not saying true, wasn't entirely right, but you can do that if you're a split family.
No, you are absolutely right, and I was not clear earlier, and I'm grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to be clear now. It is the case that there can be that contact. Again, one of the things that I'm anxious to do is to make sure that we minimise social contact, but you've given me the opportunity to clarify this point, and I'm grateful for that, that those under the age of 18, children under the age of 18, can see both parents.
Okay, I think that'll make a big difference to a lot of families who are very worried about that particular point this morning. A few more specific ones for you. What about work on cars? Can MOTs go ahead? For example, the workers, key workers who might need their car fixed to get to work. What about that sort of line of work, if you know?
Yes, garages can remain open, and obviously that's both for essential maintenance of cars, making sure that they're safe on the road, and also, of course, providing petrol. Yes, but again, I would urge people to exercise self-control, and people should not be out and about unless they absolutely need to for their work.
Does delivering food to your over 70s parents or relatives count as essential care during this sort of government restriction zone, if you like?
Yes, making sure that the vulnerable receive the support that they need is absolutely critical. The government have identified a group of people who are old, and many of those who are living with particular conditions who must stay for the next 12 weeks entirely self-isolated, and we will be distributing food and drugs and medicines and all the essentials to them. But it is also the case that we will be helping people to ensure that those who are elderly but who are not within that category can receive the food that they need. So making sure that that food can be dropped off in a safe way, yes, that is an appropriate activity, and there are volunteer groups that have sprung up across the country in order to make sure that that can continue to be done.
On that issue of food, the Prime Minister recommended using food delivery where possible. We've had a lot of our viewers get in contact to say there are no delivery slots. I think somebody contacted us yesterday to say that the earliest one they got was 3 weeks away. Are you going to try and make sure there are additional services in there? So if people want to stay at home and order, they can do that, but they obviously need to be able to get food delivered to them.
Yes, and it is the case that as well as the supermarkets, who've been doing an amazing job, and their staff, I think, deserve all our thanks, there are other food companies that are stepping up in order to ensure that we can have a more extensive network of food delivery. So, of course, there is more than enough food in the supply chain in order to ensure that if you visit the shop or the supermarket, that the shelves will be refilled every day. People should shop sparingly, but it is also the case that deliveries are being extended.
Moving house. Lots of people in that situation. Let's say, for example, you haven't yet exchanged. Are we in a situation where you can still go through with that house move, or is that going to have to be paused?
I think it is the case that if it is possible to pause, but there will be specific circumstances where we're moving down that chain when the process will mean that people will be buying or selling homes. But one of the things I would stress at the moment is that if at all possible, people should stay in their current home.
Okay, I'm getting questions coming in all the time. I appreciate you trying to answer as many of these specifically as you can. On the issue of exercise, people saying, does going to my allotment count as exercise? Does golf count as exercise? Is it? Because you can see the situation, Mr. Gove, can't you? If you are trying to enforce this situation and you say to somebody, what are you doing? Why are you out? And they say, I'm exercising, I'm going to my allotment. What happens in that situation?
I think it's perfectly sensible for people to go to an allotment. It's in the very nature of allotments that there is a safe distance between people who are working on an individual allotment, yes. But when it comes to golf, I don't think people should be playing golf. I think it should be the case that for exercise, that should be restricted specifically to walking, cycling or running.
Okay, enforcement is a really interesting point as well, because we were speaking to some social distancing experts about 20 minutes ago on BBC Breakfast, and they are saying, one of them is a former police officer as well, saying there is no way that the police force as it is can enforce these issues. This is a responsibility upon all of us, and we as a nation have to embrace this, have to do this, because if we don't, then that responsibility will come back to us. You are asking the people of the United Kingdom, our viewers on Breakfast this morning, to take these incredibly unprecedented steps, because if we don't, there is no way to enforce them. Do you concede that today?
I think that we do need to make sure that we all work together to ensure that people obey the rules. Now, the police will have the resources if there are those who deliberately set out to flout these rules to ensure that they can be effectively enforced. But my sense is that people are keen and anxious to do everything they can collectively to limit the spread of the disease. And I think that staying at home, protecting the NHS, helping to save lives, that message the overwhelming majority of people understand. We will lead our lives over the next few weeks with a determined effort to ensure that we do everything possible to avoid spreading that disease. But for those people who are determined to flout the rules, the police will have the tools in order to ensure that those people are penalised and punished if they put the lives of others at risk.
What will those... Let's give you a specific example. Let's say there's a gathering of people in a park and the police come up to them and say you've got to go home, and they don't. What measures will the police then take to make sure that those people are following the government advice?
The police will be able to disperse that gathering, and if people do not comply, then of course there is scope for fixed penalty notices, fines, and of course there are the full suite of public order measures that the police have.
So are you confident there are enough police officers to enforce this? Because lots of our viewers get in contact this morning saying that is going to be a concern, and they already see people gathering in various places and in parks and on public transport and things like that. And where are the police officers who are going to be able to come in and enforce those government plans?
Well, I think I'd say two things. I think the first thing is that the police are doing an amazing job, as all our public services are at the moment. Of course, police numbers are affected as a result of the fact that there are police officers and members of their families who are showing signs of this infection and who are self-isolating, but we still have a strong and resilient police force. The other thing, of course, as well, is that we should work with the police in order to say to people who are not behaving in an appropriate way that they should desist, but we are there ready to back up the police, ready to back all those who are responsible for maintaining public order. They have the tools that they need. I hope that people will follow this advice. If for any reason they don't, penalties are there.
What did you think when you saw, I don't know if you did see them, some of those pictures over the weekend of crammed tube trains in London with people standing next to each other as they would on any normal commute, and the pictures of people going into supermarkets crammed together and at markets? What was your feeling when you saw that?
Well, I thought that it was vitally important that we did everything that we could in order to reinforce the message.
Is that why you made the changes, Mr. Gove? Is that why
people should social distance? Yes. And one of the reasons for introducing these measures is to do everything that we can in government, working with everyone in the country in order to ensure that people can stay at home and that people do stay at home. That is absolutely vital. And of course there have been occasions over the weekend and elsewhere when people have not been practicing social distancing. We want to do everything we can to help people to do the right thing.
Very quickly, last question. What is a measure of success for this? What happens in 3 weeks' time? What do we need to see go down to make sure that this is relaxed a little?
What we want to do is we want to make sure that the reinfection rate goes down, that we slow the spread of the virus, because it's absolutely critical for making sure that our NHS is in the strongest position possible to restrict the spread. And that means restricting social contact and following the advice the government has put forward. People must stay at home to protect themselves, to protect the NHS and to save lives.
Michael Gove, thank you for being with us for a long time this morning. Thank you for all those specific questions you've answered, and thank you for answering so many of our viewers' questions as well. Appreciate you clarifying that issue as well about split families, which I think is really important.
Yeah.